Listen, all I'm saying is the word deserve is a strange word for a regular schmegular homo sapien to use. Hey cousins, I'm Shemaya. It's like papaya, except it's not, and this is Plot Twist Please. Welcome to my humble abode, welcome to my sweater, welcome to this mic, and welcome to the screen. Hey stranger, how you doing? This is the place where I like to use pop culture to make our brains a little cozier. So that means neurodiversity, that means mental health advocacy, and that means talking about the interwebs, okay? Because it is a web of innards. Yeah, sure. And I'll sip to that sparkling water, that is. This is not an ad, by the way. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Share this with your friends, your foes, or the people who you're not quite sure about yet. Come along on this journey with me, and hopefully we can explore how to make our hearts lighter and our heads a little happier. So today we're talking about Love is Blind on Netflix. Season 5 is sending us off for a loop and a spin and a run around the block because what is going on? Something that has stunted psychologists, neurologists, poets, philosophers, politicians, musicians, and if you've guessed the pattern here, most human beings on the face of the earth. Romantic relationships, right? Not just Love is Blind. It's bigger than that. Naturally, if these people couldn't figure it out, then of course I think someone who has never been in a romantic relationship, probably has it covered, right? But basically, I'm going to use the teachings and writings of these folks to prove that romantic relationships are not earned. Now, I know those sound like fighting words, and I've seen how you girls like to tussle, but this isn't coming from a place of, oh, I'm not in a romantic relationship, it means they're all fake. This is coming purely from an analytical standpoint, okay? Just to be clear, I'm not claiming that romantic relationships are not worth it. I'm not claiming that they can't be blissful and lovely and mutually supportive. I've seen amazing romantic relationships, all right? But I want to be clear, as much as I love love, and I mean, I love. Weddings, we're like this, me and weddings. You know, I'm more giddy than a preschooler at a Chuck E. Cheese at a wedding. I got my pep in my step than a tap dancer on hot coals. I thoroughly enjoy witnessing the people I care about fall in love because I know how rare it is for two people to be in love with each other at the same time. I know how rare it is for you to be in love with someone at the same time that they're in love with you, and for you to both be ready at the same time to move forward in each other's lives on a substantial level. But I can't help but reject the notion that a romantic relationship is a reward for good behavior. Now, if you're wondering where I'm getting this notion, I'd like to introduce you to the self help industry. Now, how does an industry that is mostly owned by men, and these are the CEOs on the screen if you're watching this on YouTube, how does it find itself mostly catering to women or mostly targeting women in terms of marketing? Women tend to be the focal point of self help books, of dating coaches, of relationship experts. And when it comes to personal development in general, a lot of women are the main consumer base. When you look at talk shows like Oprah, you know, there's a reason why there's a stigma around Oprah and late night talk shows that dig deep and talk about relationship issues or emotional trauma in an almost therapy style dynamic with the host and the guest on the show. And like, listen, kinfolk, I'm not gonna sit over here and pretend like I didn't love Oprah when it was in its prime, like the show and like the O Network. Oh yeah, I would sit up there in my bed with my mom and we'd watch Oprah together. That would be like that is like a legitimate core memory of mine. I love a talk show. I loved The View. I loved The Real. Like I was in the fan club. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with wanting to improve yourself. I'm someone who has come to understand that I almost on a chronic level try to improve myself. Sometimes to the point where it is not helpful and to the point where I'm actually being a perfectionist and blanketing it as self-care or self-help or painting it as self-improvement, but it's actually perfectionism. I think there's nothing wrong with your self-help books and even, you know, trying to get help from a dating coach if that's something that you want, you know, if you want a romantic relationship or maybe even a friendship coach, which I think should be more normalized, actually. I think friendship coaches should be a thing. I think people just don't talk about them or know about them. I think that women, though, first of all, are raised to really invest in understanding the inner workings of our emotions and how we tick, right? And how we relate to other people and how we contribute to part of a whole. But I don't think a lot of men are raised as young boys in the same way. And one could argue that men have a lot of mental health problems. There's a mental health crisis among men specifically because of that habit of how we rear young boys who later on become adult men who have to interact with women who, it's this vicious cycle, right? I actually, and this is a little bit off topic, but not really at all. There's this notion that men don't know any better, so the women in relationships with them should just cut them some slack, right? If they don't know how to handle their emotions, it's because they were never taught. So women should just go easy on the men, right? And to an extent, I understand that sentiment, but I also feel like women didn't know either. We were girls. We are out here trying to fall in love, trying to form secure, mutually emotionally beneficial relationships, healthy attachment styles. We're out here trying to build those for the first time too. This is our first rodeo too. We're all just little toddlers flopping around, trying to find safety, trying to feel secure in ourselves, trying to find a safe place to land. And I think that everyone should have that. I think that that is a human right to walk this earth, not being afraid of whether or not you're going to be harmed at the hands of someone else. I think that is a human right. When it comes to deserving romantic relationships, though, I think that is a very specific thing. I think that not everyone wants a romantic relationship first. I think it's this optional thing that we've been treating it as if it was the standard. I also essentially think that some people can harm other people in romantic relationships irrevocably. I think there are people who can cause continuous, malicious harm towards somebody else if they were in a romantic relationship with them, regardless of who that person is. And I don't think we talk about that enough. I don't think we talk about how, yes, everyone deserves love, but romantic love is a very specific kind of bond that is extremely intense, that I don't think that every single person is prepared to be a part of. So yeah, it's just a little sticky, little muddy, little slimy. There's another reason why the notion of relationships or rewards doesn't really sit well with me or make a lot of sense to me. First of all, I feel like this notion is often used when referring to or talking to women pursuing relationships. We don't hear that a lot when it comes to men. For men, it's almost like a right, but it seems like for women, it's a reward. Women have to work on themselves in order to get that final prize of being chosen by a man. It's just so interesting to me in the crunchiest of ways how we build so many different mechanisms in order to tell a woman she has to earn romance. Whereas for men, we don't punish the men for picking the wrong women, or rather, we don't punish the men for not being equipped or fit partners or being self-actualized or not being emotionally ready partners. We punish the woman. We criticize the woman for not picking right. If he's someone who uses her, talks to her like she's a dog, or who cheats on her, we blame the woman for picking wrong. We don't bring that same energy criticizing his actions. And when I say we, I'm talking about society at large. And so we raise girls to think that if they work really hard, if they are the perfect kind of woman, then they will eventually gain that man. If they are pure enough, if they are friendly enough, if they smile enough, if they don't nag, if they learn how to cook, if they learn how to clean, if they keep going to the gym, right? If they keep their skin clear, if they don't get wrinkles, then they will earn the right to have a male partner. But for men, it's kind of just like they just have to show up. Here's another reason why the notion of relationships or reward doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. I think it can be really harmful. Let's talk about self-hatred. We gain validation when other people accept us, right? But that can be a slippery slope, especially when we're talking about deserving a relationship. Because what happens is the people who don't end up in romantic relationships, it can start to feel like, oh, I'm just not good enough of a person. I just am not self actualized enough. If I go to therapy and I do my yoga and I do my journaling, then I will be mentally well enough and I will be healthy enough to deserve a partner. Now, I know that talking about it in this way can be really slippery, really crunchy, because I also don't think that anyone is entitled to a romantic relationship. I don't think that anyone's entitled to that, because when we're talking about traditional romantic relationships, when we're talking about monogamy, it's so invested emotionally, physically, sometimes spiritually, mentally. Like, you are investing so much into this other person that it only seems fair that the other person is bringing something to the table on an equal level. And so I understand the instinct and the desire to find an equal partner in that vein, but I think that the balance of who the onus is on to bring all that mentally readiness, emotional readiness, and self actualization to the table, I think the balance is not there. And, because I always have to bring it back to disability and neurodivergence, statistically speaking, 9 times out of 10, if a woman becomes disabled, the man will leave in that heterosexual relationship. But if the man becomes disabled, 9 times out of 10, the woman will stay. And so this puts even more pressure on disabled women to pick partners who will stand by them through the thick and thin, because most men will not. Statistically speaking, most men do not stick with their disabled wives. They, want a divorce, they find somebody else. And like everybody, of course, is entitled to want what they want in a romantic relationship. I firmly believe that you can construct a romantic relationships in whatever way you see fit, as long as both partners in that monogamous relationship are benefiting equally and there's no coercion, there's nothing gross and grubby, sticky going on. As long as everyone is happy and getting what they need, I think that is a quote successful relationship. But I also feel like disabled women have even more of a need to find partners who are emotionally, mentally, and physically capable of being there for us. When we talk about emotional readiness, like self actualization, I try to be really careful talking about that, because I know that there are people who literally can't tell what they're feeling, or it takes a long time to understand what they're feeling, let alone to communicate that with someone else. But basically, alexithymia is the inability or a limited ability to be able to detect what you're feeling. So when I try to be very careful when I'm talking about, oh, this person doesn't even know what they're feeling, doesn't even know how to communicate their emotions, because some people literally can't. Like neurologically, the chemicals just aren't doing it. They just aren't cooking the bacon the way that other people's brains are. As we talk about deserving a relationship or being self actualized or emotionally ready enough for a relationship, I do want to tread carefully, because the human brain is so complex. There are things that the scientists with the PhDs are still trying to figure out. So I'm trying to stay away from huge blanket statements, y'all. I think that when we start talking about who deserves a relationship, who deserves romantic love, right? I think what that can breed, if someone feels like they don't fit in the category that we've decided is the category of people who deserve romantic love, then it can breed self hatred and resentment. And the notion that I never understood was they're not good enough for you. When people would say that about other people who I wanted to date, they're not good enough for you. I don't get that, because none of us are good enough for anybody. Like, we are all flawed humans. No one is innocent of the tomfoolery. Okay. If that was the case, everyone in a romantic relationship would be the best version of themselves all the time. And that would explain how they got a relationship, because they were the best version of themselves all the time. And that's just not realistic. What I've learned from walking this earth thus far as someone with a mental disability is that it can often feel like your relationships, romantic or platonic, haven't worked out because you don't, quote, deserve it. You don't deserve a healthy relationship. It seems like you are missing out on the reward of romance, specifically because you aren't the best version of yourself, the most perfect version of you. But that's not even the purpose of romantic relationships, I don't think. What I'm learning as someone who is maturing in my friendships is that friendships are not the place where you're supposed to be like, okay, ta-da, I'm done perfecting myself, now I get to be around other people. It's like, no, you grow together. That's what a friendship is. It's someone willing to grow with you. I mean, for me, like, that's what fulfilling friendship for me, any kind of relationship, is having someone who's willing to make space for your most imperfect self. And I think that is a real gift when you find that. If you are the kind of neurodivergent person who has ever struggled to make and keep friends, and you understand that the stakes of a romantic relationship that most people have when it comes to dating feel the same to you as the stakes of a regular platonic relationship. Like, it feels like those butterflies in your stomach, or can barely breathe, heaviness in your chest, like, what are they going to think? What are they going to think about what I'm wearing? What are they going to think about what I have to say about the latest episode of Love Is Blind? Like, you want to impress them, almost like a little friend audition. Now, I don't know if y'all remember friend auditions, but I remember friend auditions. And I'm so glad we're not in that space anymore. But boy, oh boy, do I remember auditioning for Friends before I went to school, practicing what I was going to say, practicing what I would say to someone if they sat next to me on the bus, practicing how I would start a conversation. I would practice complimenting someone's shirt in the mirror, things you do when you're a young autistic middle schooler, classic. But my favorite piece of advice that I've ever gotten about forming relationships, period, was you can never say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing with the right person. Essentially, if you are a neurodivergent person who's experienced bullying or anything of that nature, then you know how hard it is to find safety in other people. But you can find it. Now, am I promising that people aren't going to hurt you, or that no one is ever going to steer you wrong, that people say exactly what they mean and mean exactly what they say and never have ill intentions? No. And sometimes people hurt you even when they do have good intentions. But that's part of being on this floating rock as a regular schmegular human. It's just part of the bag. It's part of the gamble. Now, I also hate the phrase, no one owes you anything, because I frankly believe we should aim to leave people better than how we found them. That's just me. That's just my ideology, okay? Because essentially, what you're saying when you say something like nobody owes you anything is, hey, dummy, hey, idiot, stop expecting people to be kind to you. The world is mean and people don't care, okay? So suck it up. That's what I hear when someone says no one owes you anything, And what is wrong with wanting to be surrounded by kindness? What is wrong with wanting someone to be gentle with you? And what does the phrase no one owes you anything actually do for us? That phrase doesn't actually serve us, Because what does that say for the person who desires to be treated with gentleness? Are they wrong for wanting that? Look, listen, I am baby, okay? I am a soft fairy cloud made of cotton candy. I cry during Finding Nemo every single time. And if I ever get into a romantic relationship, homeboy needs to treat me like someone who cries while watching Finding Nemo, okay? That's just me. But also, if you don't want that, I think you're entitled to not want that. If you don't want to be treated gently, you don't need that. Even though I frankly think that everyone needs that to some degree, but that's just me. If you don't need that, that's fine. But just because you're allergic to cats doesn't mean that everybody else has to be. There are some who love cats, and there are others whose lives are threatened by cats, and that's all right. I'm okay with a world like that. Okay, actually, cats don't deserve us, but that's beside the point. Real for real, though. The word owe and deserve are really tricky for me to put into context here, because if all of us are flawed, which we are, there's no way we can truly be indebted to one another. Because if that's the case, who is the debt collector? Who is going to follow us around individually and make sure we're all paying our debts to one another? It's not you. It's not me. I don't have that kind of authority. Here's something that'll maybe shock you, but maybe not, but maybe it will. Some of those debts never get paid, at least to the knowledge of the person who they are owed. So what do we do with that, right? What do we do with that anger, that need to have the debt that is owed to you paid? What if someone has wronged us and they don't, quote, get what they deserve? Where does that leave us? Something that comes to mind is the idea of justice being punitive, and why that tends to be our natural inclination as to what justice actually means. What if revenge is reformation and justice is rehabilitation? I know what you're thinking. What do I do with this anger, though? What do I do with the part where I was wronged? Well, there's nothing wrong with feeling anger. To me, emotions are neutral and they are simply information to you as to what your body is trying to tell you. Not that I'm giving any advice here, because I'm not licensed to give anyone any advice, but the first thing I did in order to deal with the hurt from bullies or people who seemed like they got away with harming me, I stopped telling myself no one owes you anything. Because when you say things like that to yourself, you're kind of invalidating your feelings. Now, it doesn't mean that you get to act out however you want. It doesn't mean you get to portray those feelings however you want. But we are each so deserving of community and so deserving of care. That I can say for a fact. If you are brought into this world, you deserve to feel safety. And also, even if you did ascribe to that idea that nobody owes you anything, just because nobody owes you anything doesn't mean that some things don't just feel good. Some things are just nice. No one has to throw a friend a birthday party, a surprise birthday party, but when it happens, if you're someone who appreciates that kind of attention, it makes you feel appreciated, like you matter to that person. And if we based every single human interaction on obligation, then there's not much room for genuine desire to make someone feel seen, is there? Letting someone know, I see you, I care about you, I'm glad you're here, I am a safe space for you, etc., etc. People tend to appreciate that. You don't owe anyone connection or affection or care or love, even. But it sure does make being here feel a whole lot cozier, doesn't it? Now, I was going to go into this whole breakdown of the benefits of relationships, based on sociology, based on archaeology, anthropology, all this other rigmarole. But here's a quick explanation that makes more sense to me that I think might resonate with you. It's the concept of social exchange. So, social exchange stipulates that people apply economic principles when evaluating relationships, either consciously or unconsciously, conducting a cost benefit analysis. At the same time, they compare alternatives. And according to social exchange theory, people will pursue relationships where the rewards are greater than the cost, which makes sense, doesn't it? Especially when it comes to identifying risks while weighing those options. But let me tell you something that's probably going to hurt. Whenever you're dealing with people, there is risk involved. Regardless of how long you've known them, regardless if they seem like a viable candidate, whether you're pursuing a platonic or romantic relationship with someone, you are going to have to risk something. Vulnerability costs you something. Saying I'm sorry after your flaws have been revealed or after you harm someone does, in fact, cost you something. But something I'm realizing as someone who a long time ago had decided that was completely content being alone, as a lot of autistic people do, what I've learned is that there are more people willing to make space for you than you think. What I've learned is that no one is expecting perfection. And if they are, then they're not going to be your kind of people. No one is expecting you to be the perfect, polished, ideal version of yourself. The questions I hope we start asking ourselves when we're pursuing relationships, platonic or romantic, are how does my body feel when I'm around this person? What are the parts of me that need to be healed? What does this person reveal to me about myself? And is this person going to be willing to help me grow? You'd be surprised how many people just want to be around yes men or people who don't hold them accountable for their actions. But I like to grow. I like to. Here's the thing: your friends could be out here making you look stupid if they don't help you grow. There is nothing more embarrassing. I get secondhand embarrassment, and this is not trying to be shaming, but I do get secondhand embarrassment from people who I can tell no one has ever told them no, or I can tell none of their friends have ever sat them down to say, "Hey, I don't like this. I don't like when you do this. Or this doesn't sit well with me." Like no one has ever done that to them ever, ever. And it's just so clear. It's just so clear. And I never want to be in that kind of position. My friends know this. I like boundaries, being corrected. Those are love languages to me. They are examples of wanting an intimate relationship with me. They are examples of valuing me enough as a person to hold me accountable for when I'm wrong. That is true care to me. As I wrap this episode up, I do hope that in light of everything going on in Gaza, that we remember that self-care should not come to the expense of our community, of our communities, especially if the people who being harmed are people who are more marginalized than us, because at that point it's not self-care, it's community harm. I hope we remember that we aren't expected to be perfect when pursuing equity in this messy world with complicated histories and complicated people and individuals operating under systems with complicated traumas. It's going to be messy. Individual growth is messy, but so is community growth. So is mending a wound. So is community healing. Yeah, that's all I have for you today. Thank you for joining me. I absolutely forgot to tell you all this, but I'm selling these stickers on my Etsy shop, the Plot Twist Please Etsy shop. I'm also selling some prints. So this sticker says "Not Your Inspiration," and this sticker says "Love a Black neurodivergent woman from infinity to infinity." Thanks for tuning in. Be blessed and stay weird.